Greetings, everyone. This is a very unique privilege, pleasure. I don't even know how to describe it, in that I get to do interviews with people who are in the category of being legends in this wonderful direct selling industry that we are all a part of. Rudy is the craftsman behind multiple highly successful direct selling companies. And forgive me for reading a bit, but I want to make sure that I don't miss anything. Highly successful direct selling companies, including Symmetry and Singular, which he founded in 1995 and 2009, respectively. As the chairman and founder of Global Ventures Partners, an investment capital firm committed to creating opportunities for common people to achieve uncommon results, and that really says a lot about Rudy. He was instrumental in the acquisition and rebranding of Pure Haven in 2016. Born in Germany and the son of a World War II refugee, Revak is also the author of Iron String, the tumultuous true story of a life affected by war. So, my friends, this is who we are talking with today. And I want to start out by reflecting on something that Rudy and I share in common. And that is, we have been involved with the direct selling model about the same period of time. And we go back together many, many years to a company called Bestline Products. And I remember seeing Rudy come to meetings, and I remember looking at Rudy as being someone who was very passionate. He worked hard. He was always doing what we were coached to do in order to be successful. And he was very excited. It was really direct selling in a grassroots form. And I can remember doing demonstrations, demonstrating that all-purpose cleaner, marking up a board with a piece of carpet, a piece of tile, squirting the cleaner, removing the crayon, and then squirting the cleaner in my mouth to prove that it was a safe product. So right. That's kind of where we started. I hope you can appreciate memories like that, because that passion, that belief that we had found a way to participate in something that was very different is probably at the foundation of what drove us. What motivated you to get engaged in your first direct selling business?
John, that's a pretty easy answer, because it was opportunity. As you mentioned, I was born in Germany as a refugee. My mom and dad were Hungarian and Romanian refugees who escaped after the war to get away from the communists. And then when I was 5 years old, we moved to America. And I was raised on a chicken farm in New Jersey. And so I didn't have a lot of opportunities. When I got out of high school, I went to work full-time in a retail store. I wound up spending 3 years in the United States Army, spent my 13 months over in Vietnam. And when I came home, the Army allowed me, they said, through this thing called a GI Bill, you can go to college and we'll help pay for it. And so they were willing to give me $271 a month, which back then was a lot of money to me. And they said, we'll give you $270 a month and you go sit in school. I said, well, gee, I'm good at sitting and I need the money. So I decided when I got out of the Army, I went back to work in a retail store full-time, and I started to go to college, thinking that that was going to be my answer for the future, that if I got this college education, that would help. And while I was doing that, I got invited to a business presentation. It was actually a total stranger calling me on the I got home one day and the telephone rang and a guy said, hi, would you like to make some more money? And I said, don't hang up. So the guy invited me to a business presentation, which was about, I lived in a little farm town in Jersey. And so I had to go about 30 miles to this business presentation. And when I got there that night, there were all these guys standing with these nice looking suits on, and lots of people excited. And they went up to the front of the room, and the first thing the guy did that night when he went up to the front of the room was he wrote on the top of the board, wrote $30,000, right? 30,000. Man, he had my attention instantly, because that was 1970. And $30,000 then was a lot of money. And
Yes.
so they had my attention, and then they started to draw all these circles and names and discounts and percentages on the board. And I didn't understand any of it. I just saw that $30,000. and when they gave me that opportunity, I got started in that business as soon as I could. And I say as soon as I could because they had quite an investment back in those days to get involved. It was $3,117 to start as what they called a direct, if you remember those days.
I do.
And I went home that night. I was so excited. I drew some circles on a napkin and showed my dad. I said, look at this. And I was all excited. And I said, but man, it's not possible. Well, to make a long story short, about 3 weeks later, my dad came to me with a check for $3,117. He had put up his farm and his house. They had no money. It still makes me emotional to this day that he would do that for me. But he brought me that check and said, here, I want you to have the chance that I never had. And I got in that business. And to tell you the truth, for the first 9 months I was in the business, I was the best. I was the most terrific. I was the most outstanding failure that the company had to that point. And I did not do well at all. I sold a little product. I enrolled a few people, but I wasn't doing, I was only 23 years old, and I was a littlest farm town. I had to go 60 miles round trip to get to a business presentation. But as I said before, I'm German, so I'm hard-headed and I don't quit. And so I hung in there and I stuck around, and there were a lot of good people back then who helped me. I'm sure many of these people, as you know, Jim Rohn, he was in our business back in those days. He was a great mentor to us. Marty Day, Joe Catronio, and just some people back then who were just magic for us.
Yes.
Remember those people?
Yes, I do.
And I just hung in there, and pretty soon I started to learn. And once I learned good. And my business started to grow, and I stopped going to, I quit my job, went full time, and then they offered me the opportunity to go to what back then was called an area coordinator, to move from New Jersey, where I was, down in Baltimore, and become this area coordinator. And so I quit school, went down to Baltimore, and became area coordinator, and we just did great there. And that's about the days when I met you. You were up in Chicago then, you and Willie.
Yes.
I was down in Baltimore as an area coordinator, and we would meet at those meetings once a month that we'd have in California.
Yep.
Those are some very exciting days.
Now, when you reflect back on those days, at some point you knew that you had made the right choice and this was for you. Now, along the way, was it your fear of failure in disappointing your dad, or was there some moment when you knew this was for you, that you were going to do this regardless of whether you had gotten off to a good start or not? You were going to make this work. Can you hone in on that moment? What was the real motivation?
Yeah, well, as I said, my dad had to put up the house and the farm for mortgage in order to get that $3,100 for me, because in those days, and in today's dollar, that would be about, I don't know, 45, 50,000 US dollars. And then in that first 9 months when I didn't do well, did I have some doubts? Did I have some fear? Boy, you bet I did. Because I couldn't now let down my parents, which is one of the benefits of having that little bit of that investment that I wound up making. That was one of the benefits, because I couldn't give up. I had to make it work. And I hung in there until I finally learned how to make it work. But you know what? I never doubted from the beginning that it would work, that it was good, because I was watching people who were making money, people who were just average people. People who were, some were doctors, some were engineers, some were truck drivers, some were factory workers, they were from all these different backgrounds, and they were making it work. And I kept saying to myself, listen, if those people can make it work, then so can I. And one of the things that always influenced right from the beginning, you of course remember Jim very well. And one of Jim Rohn's basic statements was, for things to change, you have to change. And for things to get better, you have to get better. And when he told me that, that stuck in my mind. And every day I would think, okay, if I'm going to make this work, I got to make me better. Stop looking at what I'm not, stop looking at what I can't do. Let me figure out, how am I going to make this work? And so I think you're right. We all had some fear at some point. But if you're willing to persist through that fear, man, you can make it work at anything.
Now you are beginning to not only impact your personal life, but now you are giving back. You are really impacting the lives of a lot of other people. What are the memorable moments? And now I'm thinking about Rudy as the emerging leader. What are the memorable moments there during that part of the process before I get to the companies that you founded?
Well, back in those days when I first started to get involved, as you say, internationally, I was doing well as an area coordinator in Baltimore. And we actually went to a conference. And back then, the leader of that Bestline company, Bill Bailey, and the executives were there doing this career conference, they called it. And they were starting to go international, or they had already gone, but they were expanding internationally. And this fellow named Chuck Simmons, who was the international vice president at that time.
I remember.
Remember him? He
Yeah.
got to the front of the room and he said, if any of you in this room want to go international, let me know. Well, we were sitting in the second row right behind these guys. And so he came off the stage, sat down, and my buddy, who was also an area coordinator, Stan leans over and he says to him, he says, hey, Rudy speaks German, send his butt to Germany, as a joke. And I was doing really well in Baltimore at that time as an area coordinator. My finances were doing terrific. Business was booming. We were selling lots of product. Things were great. All of a sudden, I get back to Baltimore. My phone is ringing off the hook. This guy, Simmons, he can't find me fast enough to try to convince me to go to Europe. So that's how I wound up in international. So I went to Germany, became the sales leader, and eventually became the head of the German company for Bestline back then. And an interesting thing, John, as you remember probably, was it was during that time when the Bestline US company went out of business. And a terrific gentleman named Jerry Brassfield, who you're going to be interviewing, he's one of the legends. Jerry came in and he basically bought what was left of the company. And along with that buy came people like me. And he put together a terrific system for us to allow us to operate the companies internationally. Those were exciting days, and they were fun days. They were challenging days, but golly, they were good days.
And you're exactly right. Jerry brought a system to what we had learned about what we call direct selling. I don't think we had completely defined it back in the beginning of our experiences, but Jerry certainly is one who helped define it. And he put an emphasis on customers. And we talk a lot about customer acquisition and retention today. And I can remember some of Jerry's conversations many, many years ago when that became a very important part of what he was coaching us to do, or how he coached us to go out and build businesses and impact the lives of others. So now you have come a long way, Rudy, and as we continue to fast forward, you now are inspired to start your own company and continue to impact the lives of other people in a more personal way. I think you had some very definitive objectives when you found Symmetry, and today we know it's Singular, which has become another growth company over the past few years. So at some point you decide not to just play a role, but to be a leader and be in a leading role of now creating these kind of opportunities for other people based on some great products. And in Symmetry, you kind of made a decision that you were going to focus more on nutrition, if I remember correctly. So kind of take us through what happened. What inspired Rudy to now move from playing a very significant role to being the entrepreneur, the leader that you are today?
Well, John, I mentioned that I spent that time in Europe, and then after I left Italy, I came back to the United States, and I was still with the group, Jerry Brassfield's group, at that time, and I took over a company that they owned called Diamite. Right now, in the meantime, though, while I was in Canada in those years, nutrition started to become my first love. So I took over Diamite in California, and we turned it into from jewelry to skincare, then skincare to a nutrition business. And our number one product back then was an aloe product. And we did great. The business was very successful, very profitable. And then years later, I decided for a variety of reasons that to leave that opportunity and to start my own company. And that was the start of Symmetry. And Symmetry was a nutritional business. And we were fortunate enough that I had a lot of distributors that followed me, good people that had been around me for a long time. And we had a good launch for Symmetry and the success of that company. And then what happened, you mentioned other businesses. One of the things that happened to me over that time, John, was the fact that I would watch these companies that would go out and start. And as you know, all the years you've been in, you've seen a lot of companies come and go. And one of the things that always broke my heart was when Bestline didn't continue in the US and a lot of the people that I had recruited lost their opportunity. I still had opportunity because I was at that time in Germany and so on. And that broke my heart. And so anytime I would see a company that wasn't doing well, I tried to make it a goal that I would go out and see if there was some way I could make an acquisition of that company and merge them into Symmetry and somehow acquire those distributors to just give them opportunity. And many times these were very small companies, so it had no significant impact to Symmetry, but it had a significant impact to those people that were losing their opportunity.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so that really, John, that's how I got involved in then starting other companies. So Symmetry was doing well. And then somebody brought me this idea, a concept of a unique compensation system. And I didn't want to change the system we had in Symmetry. And so we started, and it was another company, a diet company at that time that wasn't doing well. They had done some really good sales. They were doing, they had it up to a couple of $1 million a month in sales. And they were looking for an exit strategy because they were not profitable. And so I acquired that company, and that was the start then of Singular Corporation, based on diet and now nutrition. And so it was always, in my mind, John, it was more so not about the business, it was more so about the distributors. Because you have to remember, I came out of nothing. If it wasn't for this industry, if it wasn't for this business, if it wasn't for that guy who made that phone call that night and invited me to a business presentation, I don't know where I'd be. I don't know. I would have maybe wound up working in a factory like a lot of my friends did, maybe becoming a mechanic. Now, I was ambitious, so maybe I would have done better. But would I ever done this well? No way. No way, because it wasn't just the opportunity that this industry gave me. It was this training that I got from people like the Jim Rohns, the Bill Baileys, the Jerry Brassfields, about people development, about developing ourselves, the personal development aspect of what this business gives people. There's nowhere else in the world that happens. I mean, you know, you can go out and maybe buy a franchise, you can go out and start your own business, but who's going to be there to teach you how to develop yourself, make you better? Yeah, there's thousands of good books on the market, as we know. And nowadays, good audios that you can listen to of personal development and good personal development speakers. But man, we had it firsthand from some of the best on this earth.
When you put all of the emphasis on the people who become involved, who sometimes come to us, as I like to say, with a hope, a dream, or even a prayer that this could be part of the answer to making life better for themselves. And you just brought all of that back to what motivated you. And you've constantly referred back to the guy who started with nothing, a lot of hunger. You wanted to do better. Your parents were obviously loving to support you the way they did when you first got started. But I'm hearing the Rudy Revak now that I've always known, and that is the Rudy who always thought about the people, moving the people, uplifting the people, helping the people to see something that maybe they had not seen themselves. So I'm honored, my friend, just to have heard that from you over the past few minutes. So thank you for that.
The thing that motivates me the most, and people say to me all the time, Rudy, you've been doing this for 50 years. Why do you still do this after all this time? Why do you still go to the meetings and do it? Because that's what I love about this business. I love seeing those people grow. When I see those people stand on stage and get their checks and get their awards and rewards for the hard work that they've done, man, to watch people, a homemaker stand up on stage and change their entire life and know that you were a part of that. That's what's so rewarding about this industry, and that's the most rewarding. And in today's world, in my opinion, yes, we have a lot of tools now that people didn't have. I remember back when internet became popular. I don't know, what was that, 20 years ago, whatever. And they first started talking about the internet. And man, all of a sudden, there was going to be no more direct sales. You're not going to have to do this because everything was going to be done over the internet. The internet was nothing but a tool that people use to share the opportunity and the products more. And I see that same thing today, our social media, the social media aspect of our business. All it has done is made us given the opportunity as a tool to communicate better, to communicate easier. Instead of making a list of names and standing out on the street and making the phone calls. Yes, it makes those things easier. But this business, in my opinion, never changes. And that is, it is still a people business. That's one of the things that has disappointed me the most in this last year. And that is, oh, we're doing big video conferences with thousands and thousands of people on there, but not for me. That's not it. I don't feel as good about that as showing up at a conference with 1,000 people in a room and walking around and shaking hands and hugging people and seeing those smiles, because that's what makes this business real, in my opinion. And I don't think that'll ever change. We are a person-to-person business. We are about the people. Yes, we have great products. Yes, we have great opportunity, but man, they vary. But the thing that doesn't vary is that it's people, the average people that make this business work. That's what's so magic about our industry.
So in this current environment where we are forced to use virtual, I think you're still making a big point. We still have to make it about the people. Even though we can't physically hug them, we're going to have to create the virtual hug. And I think I hear you saying that you're optimistic about the future. At some point, we won't be talking COVID-19 the way we do today. And you still see this model as being that model that brings people together, where people find something that they don't find in other traditional business models. Did I hear you correctly?
That's what I believe. Yes, I believe that. Now, will there be models that are only done over the internet? Probably. Will there be models that are only done over social media? Probably, and there are some today already. But I think the long term of our industry still has to be people. It's got to be based on the people. And even with the social media and so on, don't ever forget, or I guess I'm talking to the people who are using a lot of it, don't forget that it's about the people. So the recognition, whether it's over the Zoom conference or it's over some form of social media, or it's still about the recognition. It's still about the communication. It's still about the one-on-one. It's still about the phone calls. I say that all the time to our team. You know, they are on there calling people all the time. They're communicating with them. They're staying involved. I mean, we even had some of the guys in Singular, people that earned a bonus check as a contest. These guys actually flew out to each of these homes, would drive out to the home in various areas around the country and deliver a check that they had earned, a reward check, which was the contest, just because we wanted to celebrate the people, right? They had to stand 6 feet apart or whatever it was, and they wore their masks or whatever they did, but we still want to celebrate people and their achievements.
Hey, that's great. I know a lot of people are listening, will be listening to this, and that is a very valuable insight. You've taken the situation and you personalize it. That's better than Publishers Clearinghouse.
Right.
Somebody knocking on the door and delivering that check personally, that's got to be super exciting. So, Rudy, this is more than exciting, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate the privilege of just interacting with you this way. So, I'm going to move to my last question, and I'm going to let this be your opportunity to talk to many people who want to be just like you, who want to emulate your principles, your values, your motivations, what you attempt to give back. And you put a big emphasis on people in this interview. I wish I had a big P to put up. It is all about the people. I certainly came up that way. I believe in that. That's what drives me today. It's that model that is most unique when it comes to how it supports and uplifts people from all walks of life. So, my question, what advice would Rudy Revak like to share with our audience?
To go forward and into the future for this business, all I can tell you is what made the difference for me. And again, I have to go back to our old mentor, Jim Rohn, who taught me a lot of this. I really believed in everything Jim was teaching about the personal development and growing yourself. If you want to the future to be better, grow yourself into a better future. And the things that I learned over these years that helped me a lot was, number one, to have a dream. It's in that desire, it's in that vision. Without vision, a man perishes. And it's having a vision of where you want to go, not where you are, but where you want to be in the future. And starting with that dream. Now, today we call it goals or desires, or come up with some other unique ways of saying it, but it's that vision for the future. I think that that is always exciting, knowing where you want to go. Number two, being willing to go to WORK. Unfortunately, in today's world, some people think that's a four-letter word. And they're looking for the easy way out. And I got to tell you, if it's worth it, if your vision is big enough and it's worthwhile, you've got to be willing to go do the work, because I can guarantee you, not only that if you work hard, you can make it, but I can guarantee you that there will be discouragement, there will be disappointment, there will be disadvantage that comes along the way. I have this belief that God sits there and says, okay, you got this dream, this goal, okay, let me see you work for it. And you go to work hard, and it doesn't happen, and you work hard and it doesn't happen, you don't work hard. And pretty soon, you're just working hard, and then all of a sudden one day, boom, there's the reward.
Yeah.
And it doesn't show up slowly. It kind of, you work so hard, and all of a sudden, ooh, boom, there's a reward. See, at least that's how it's been for me all these years. So you've got to be willing to continue to do that work that it takes in order to move forward. Another thing that I think that's major, and that is always, as Jim taught us, your attitude. Because it's never your aptitude that determines your altitude. It's always the attitude. It's how you feel about what you're doing, not what you're doing. And I've always been kind of an excitable guy. So I think that's one of the reasons I became successful as an area coordinator. I was just excited about having a chance. But the point is, it's in your attitude. If you think you can, you can. And so, as we've been taught forever in this industry, and that goes for whether you're a new distributor or you're a company leader, people follow your attitude. They follow how you feel, not what you say. They follow how you feel about what you say. And so that's the point. And last but not least, the most magical one of all, because if it wasn't for this one, I wouldn't be here today. And that's the ability to persist, to never stop trying, to never give up. Even when it's tough, times are tough, you got to fight your way through it. We had a time, you probably remember back in the mid-'70s when governments were attacking us pretty heavily for being, quote, pyramid companies. Well, I was in Canada at that time. We were not a pyramid company. And they passed this law called the Combines Investigation Act. And they tried to shut us down. They actually came into the company, took our records, came over to my house and raided my house. And they just tried to drive us out of the country and shut us down. And man, we were not going to give up because we knew we were right. We knew we had good business. We knew we were selling products. We were doing the right thing. And by persistent and hanging in there, we became one of the only companies that survived back then in the 70s. It was us and Amway and Shackley, I think, were about the only ones that made it back in those days. But it was through that persistence. And that same thing holds as true today as it was back then. You got to keep on keeping on and believe in what you're doing. I'll leave you with this. This industry has given, in my opinion, more average people, and by average, I don't mean poor, because there are doctors, lawyers, engineers, truck drivers, people of every background that have joined this business and succeeded. But this industry gives the average person the best opportunity for financial independence, success, however you define that, and most important, a life full of adventure. And that's really what this has given me. It's made my life. Gosh, if tomorrow God decides to take me, I have lived 2-3 lifetimes of most average people's lives with what's been able to happen to me because of this business. So if you want a life full of adventure, this industry, this business, this works. This can give it to you, but it ain't easy, but it's worth it.
Well said, my friend. And Rudy Revak, this is truly a pleasure, an honor, and I'll remember this day. And Rudy, you are a legend. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John. Pleasure to be with you.